So Silent tweeted that very recently, all for Christ's sake. And basically, it's a screenshot of an hexadecimal editor, which is taking a look at an application made by Rockstar. And as you can see in the decoded text right there, you have Razer 1911. So what does that mean? Well, it's simple. It means that this particular executable has been modified, and it's been modified by Razer 1911. So if you're not familiar with Razer, it's a famous pirate group which is usually doing no CDs cracks. So it simply means that the executable is being modified to run without a CD. In the past, it was very common for games to require the use of a CD to function, even though the game was installed and was not requiring the content on the CD itself. It was basically used as a method to make sure that you actually own the game. It was an easy way to counter piracy. But it was not very effective because basically, if you were smart enough and if you knew how to do stuff, you could modify the executable and remove that part. And so when Razer 1911, the group, was doing that, they were also introducing a bit of text in here to show that it was made by them. And so the interesting thing is that in Midnight Club 2, which is a game made by Rockstar that is on Steam, as you can see from the path in here, Steam apps common Midnight Club 2. We basically have this Razer 1911 text. So why is it the case? Well, the explanation is actually pretty simple. When you're a publisher or a developer and you want to put your old catalog of games on Steam, you have one solution, and it's to remake them to support the newest methods of deliveries. So, for example, you would support Steam and stuff, and you would remove the code that requires the use of a CD. But if you're lazy, what you can do is you can use what is basically a cracked game, in this case, cracked by Razer, and you can basically use that instead of remaking it yourself. So apparently, this is what Rockstar is doing with this game, and it's possible that it's happening with other games also. CD was the DRM of the past Shady games. Exactly. It was one way of using DRM. Nowadays, we famously have de novo, which is usually impacting performances, and sometimes it even requires internet. But in the past, there was also the use of USB keys. I remember that for some versions of, maybe for Photoshop, but I'm not sure. But other softwares like that were costing a lot, they would require a small USB dongle to be plugged in the computer to make sure that you were able to use the software. And so using CDs was one of the ways to do that with DRMs. So it's not the first time that we've seen that, actually. It's not the first time that we've seen a company use pirated stuff. If I'm correct, it was also the case with Nintendo and with emulators. But in here, I'm not exactly sure. I don't really remember. Lots of companies are pouring millions into making sure that their game are not pirated, which usually is not very efficient because at some point the game will be pirated, even with the most the biggest DRMs that we have nowadays, like the Nuvo. At some point the game just gets cracked. So is it really useful to spend that much money and to go after the guys that are cracking the games to then use their work because you're too lazy to do it yourself? I find it a bit ironic, and I don't know what you think about it, but it sounds crazy to me that they're doing that. So it could be negligence. Of course, it sounds weird that they're not going into the executable. It's just they could just remove that part, right? They could have just used the executable that was cracked by Razer and remove the text, but they didn't even care to do it. So maybe they weren't even they didn't know that it was there, but it seems very weird. And also, just I don't like anti-piracy. I think it's a lost cause, and I think it's not very useful. Just to remind you of something, at some point in the EU, there was a report that was required. I don't remember by who, but there was a report that was made on piracy, trying to understand if it was hurting the amount of games being sold online and stuff. And what the report found, it was the opposite, actually. And when you think about it, it makes sense, because most of the time what happens is people that are pirating games, they do it because they can't do it. They don't have any other options. They do it because they don't have the money. They're too young, maybe, to buy the games, or they live in a country where it's not available to buy. It's happening more than you might think. So, in a sense, those people were not going to pay for the game. But what can happen is that they will talk about the game. They will enjoy the game. And maybe they will talk about other people about the game, which end up buying the game. You can also think about people that are not able to buy the game right now, but maybe will do it in the future. You can totally think about someone that pirated Skyrim first when it launched because maybe they were too young, they didn't have enough money or whatever. And when it was reintroduced on the Switch, for example, maybe they bought it here because now they had the power to buy the game and they enjoyed the game, so they bought it. So overall, my belief on that is that it's vain. You spend time and money on things that are not super useful, and you could be doing something else. Also, usually DRMs are hurting the players themselves because it removes them from the ability to just put their game on another computer easily, or maybe play offline in some case. In some of the worst cases, it's hurting performances. So it's just a bad thing. And it's very ironic when actually companies like Rockstars or others that are fighting piracy so badly end up just using pirated games. I find that completely ironic. This is huge, though, especially coming from such a large company. Exactly. I hope it's going to. I don't know what exactly could be happening after that, but I hope it's going to maybe relaunch the debate on DRMs and on piracy and on all of that. Maybe something good will come out of it, but I don't think so. It's funny because there are two illegal practices facing each other. The fact that a group pirated the software versus the rights the company has on a hack made by the group. Yeah, they should split and share the revenue of the game. I mean, in a way, they should be compensated. What do you think? I think they should be compensated. They did some work, actually. They removed the CD requirement from the game. And now this company is going to profit on that by putting the game on Steam and generating more revenue from something that they didn't do themselves. Maybe they should be compensated, even though what they did was probably illegal. But come on. We can maybe take a look at that. This explained the myth of the retail MC2 crashing on Vista. The game is most likely innocent, as the demo works great out of the box. It was, again, the crack breaking it. This gets better. Razer's crack is fine. The reason both Midnight Club 2 and Manhunt crashed when these cracks were in use was the fact that Steam DRM included a .bind section that was code not marked as code, thus tripping data execution prevention. Only Midnight Club 2. Manhunt has more issues indeed. Bind section is okay. It's getting very technical in here. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but. So this guy, Silent on Twitter, game developer, modder, reverse engineer, legacy code specialist. I port games for a living and patch them as a hobby. That's pretty cool, right? That's where it's tricky. They did something bad, but the thing they did is now used without permission from the owner of the software. Interesting indeed. As a company, can you use a crack because it was made illegally on your game? I don't think so. That's an interesting case for a lawyer, right? I hope a lawyer might do a video about that on YouTube, because I think it's an interesting topic. I'm gonna reread that because I'm launching the record again because this is interesting, okay? So, act as if it was the first time I was reading it. It could also have side impacts on Steam itself, where they'll adapt and get new ways to review a game build to prevent that, as they do not want generally to be targeted by issues, as they do with the use of AI right now. This is also an interesting aspect, which makes things even more complicated, right? At one point, Steam will intervene in that subject. Will they decide, like, if Steam is now aware that there's part of the game that is not supposed to be used by the developer, are they going to remove the game from such a big company? Are they going to, like, enforce the thing and say, hey, this is not yours, we know it from what is inside? This is an interesting aspect. And also, in a way, Steam could totally be like, oh, we don't know what's happening, because unless you're looking into the executable, you have no idea, right? And it's a very interesting topic, because it's very highly probable that lots of games on Steam have content that they should not have, right? For many reasons. Probably deals that were cancelled, maybe you didn't pay the artist correctly, maybe you took things that were not your property. It's very likely that it's the case on Steam already. But they don't really care about that unless it's very obvious. I think it's exactly what they're doing with the AI position that they have at the moment. It's just that they are seeing that in general, AI is seen as something not good for people. And because they don't want to get into problems with copyrights and stuff, they're just saying, okay, if we think that there's AI, we remove the game. It's really an easy way. I don't think it's because of a higher stance on life and on ethics or whatever. They're very conservative, making sure they will not get any problems with the software it is distributing. Yeah, exactly. They just don't want any problem. So that is interesting to see if something is going to happen or not.